I put it like this, man. I used to think that my grandma wouldn't get metaphysics. But now, she is metaphysics. Because that's how I experience her. Because when you open up spiritually, when you awaken rather, and you start to experience things in a more metaphysical way, that does not exclude your grandma. Typically, man, when I was growing up, seeing my grandparents was really ordinary, normal. You know, I didn't think that my grandparents were spiritual, but now, man, they're inseparable from God. They are God. You know, you'll start out this path, bro, like wanting to be on your own, drawing a really harsh line between like grandparents and spirituality of the universe. Like you'll start out, man, kind of, I mean, this is how I started out, on my own, smoking a bunch of weed, exploring myself, exploring my experience, learning about myself, opening my mind, enjoying myself. But if I have to go see my grandparents, bro, that's boring as fuck. But then it changes. And they start to become closer, almost like the same thing. Not that you're necessarily smoking weed with your grandma. More so, and it sounds a bit strange, man, but you can experience what you were trying to do when you were on your own getting high with the presence of another human being or another soul who might happen to be a grandma or granddad. Yeah? Like, again, also, man, for me, if I go over and visit my grandma, it's not that I'm going to go and see someone. It's like when I'm sitting there in the room with her, if I take a second to meditate or just become conscious again, I see God. I see it in the tea that I drink. I see it in my grandma. I see it in her little dog. You see it and you're like, dude, this isn't how it used to be. This used to be a less exciting, almost chore-like activity. It used to be something you kind of maybe had to do, to see family, to check up on people, right? And you kind of think to yourself, dude, I didn't used to have this kind of experience. I didn't used to be able to see the universe in my grandma. In fact, here's a cool thing, man. Like, notice you can't find anything in your experience that isn't reality, that isn't God. Like, it's cool as well because you can even think, you can imagine like a peanut or a squirrel or a tree or a painting. And even that, what is that really? If you go inward and experience that, that's a thought being held within my consciousness. But of course, man, if you break that duality down as well, that thought is consciousness. And then you've got to do a bit of work because you're like, wait a second, the thought of a squirrel in my mind, like surely that's different from the squirrel that I see in front of me, right? The more you investigate, the more the boundaries collapse, the more you can see through, and you realize that like they're made out of the same stuff. That's how I got into it, man. I realized, okay, like, well, what is that squirrel made out of right now in my experience when I'm looking at it? And this one as well, man, it's very similar to how there's no difference between reality and your nightly dreams. So again, it's made out of the same stuff. They're both consciousness. They're both direct experience. They're both reality. Now, dude, I may be throwing at you a bunch of non-dual things that maybe you haven't experienced yet. That's okay. Consider that as I throw them your way, consider that they are seeds. Because what you can do, man, is you can plant them by thinking about them, by contemplating them, by reflecting on them, by investigating and by questioning. And what happens as you do this is you're watering it, right? You're watering it and it grows. What will happen is like at some point, a flower will emerge. And like you could say that flower is like an insight. You'll have your own insight. You'll get it because that's how you get it, man. You don't get it by like hearing the stuff and saying, oh yeah, like I remember like Seb said that thing about like how everything's non-dual, right? No. It's like you hear that like 2 years ago and then you like wrestle with it for ages, trying to get it. And like in contemplating it, at some point, it becomes a bit clearer. But of course, you got to notice that like if you hear something that's coming from the outside, notice if you kind of already slightly believe it. Notice if you kind of have a bias towards you want it to be true. Or notice how like it's currently a belief, but you want it to be an insight. Yeah, so you've got to make that leap. And in doing that, you've got to drop the belief, because the belief isn't it. And instead, man, you've got to water the seed, and you've got to give it what it needs, and you've got to allow it to grow. And then you'll have your own insights, and then you start to get it more, because you're having more insights. Because what you want really, man, is you don't want me to tell you stuff. You want me to share with you things that help you have your own insights. Because for you to get stuff, again, it happens through direct insight. Yeah. Which is very similar to having it like via direct experience. In fact, it is the same thing. Yeah. Because when you have a direct insight, that's happening within your own direct experience. So remember that, practice, meditate, contemplate, and this stuff will make so much more sense, man. Give it some time. Okay, we're going to wrap things up there. My friend, lots of love, take care, and as always, man, peace.